Here we are. We're live.
Where?
We've
Where?
practiced an undisclosed location.
Okay.
The,
And what
the,
is
the
this?
studio here. This is the Saranac Lake Effect Show. This is
Episode one.
episode 1, 2022, recorded sometime before the new year. And yeah, we're gonna do this. So
That's
we've been,
only what 3 or 4 months behind our
yeah, I think we had
our target date.
a July start date planned.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we're getting it done. We didn't give up, persevering.
Never give up.
So
Never surrender.
yeah, this is not exactly a reboot of Talk of the Town from back in the day, but it was Talk of the Town was kind of the inspiration.
Inspired by.
Inspired by, yes.
Right.
So some credit due to the producers of Talk of the Town, and we'll reveal the credit to our intro music at a later episode as well.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
going to be this lingering mystery.
That's right.
For some amount of time until some week when we have absolutely nothing to talk about.
Which I'm sure will happen.
We'll run out of topics, and then we'll just go to revealing who has provided the music.
There you go. And maybe the couple of folks out there whose music this is are already wondering when we're going to give them the credit they deserve. But they did say we could use it for free. They didn't know what they were saying it was free for. So thank you for agreeing to let us use this without knowing what we're using it for.
Without really knowing.
Yeah.
And when we go to the real big time, they might start demanding royalties.
That's right. Yeah. Well, that's how we can only hope. Well, who are we? Well, if you're not watching, if you're listening, who are you hearing right now? So we've got Jeremy Evans on the mic.
Good question. Jeremy Evans and Justin Garwood.
That's right. So here we are. So
now, how did we actually come to this point? I mean, we haven't known each other all that long. I've forgotten when we met exactly.
I think it must have been on the school board.
Right. And when did you join the school board?
I joined, that would have been summer of 2021, and ran for school board, elected, and everyone gave me the typical congratulations and condolences for joining the school board. And you were vice president at the time.
Yep.
Just gearing up for your mayoral run.
5 years. At that point, it would have been about 5 years.
Yeah. Okay.
A little bit more than that.
All right.
So that's how we met.
That's how we met. Yeah. And we didn't really have a lot of chance to talk outside of that. We just kind of, occasionally we bumped into each other at the turkey trot, maybe saw each other. That may have been there. And then things happened, life went on. And eventually we had I had an idea for doing a podcast. And that's all it was. It was just an idea for a podcast about Saranac Lake. And that's all I had. That was the whole rough draft. And then I think you and I went for a walk around town and talked about what this could be.
I'm really excited because Saranac Lake is a pretty unique place.
Mm-hmm.
You grew up here, so you know that. I've lived here 15 years. And the sky's the limit as far as topics.
100%.
Which might surprise people if they aren't from here and they kind of happened upon Saranac Lake and found this little dinky town of 5,000 people. And you would think, what could there possibly be to talk about that much?
Yeah.
But we're here to prove them wrong.
That's right. Well, it's like I listen to sports talk every day, and you're like, well, how can they possibly have stories? There's always something happening in sports besides the scores. There's always something happening.
There's a lot of drama in sports.
There's always something happening here too. And so I think we're not going to lack for topics or hopefully guests that want to come on and join us. But for now, we're going to do this.
Well, so let's talk about that. So we have an idea of how we want these shows to go.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously people are going to hear us, and they may or may not like what we have to say.
Hopefully both.
And I think we're both interested to see when we don't agree with each other and how that works.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to
how fast I try to replace you.
Yes.
With someone who always agrees with me.
Right.
That's the goal. Yeah.
And then we also want to have guests.
That's the hope. Get guests on here.
Interesting people from Saranac Lake who have a story or are doing something interesting. And I can't wait for that either.
Yeah. Well, and the goal of this show, the Saranac Lake Effect show, is to talk about the town and talk about less where we've been, more where we're going. But we do need to know some of the history of the town. Like you said, you moved here 15 years ago. I was born and raised here. Family roots go all the way back to the beginning of the town. So different perspectives, but we're both here. Both decided to raise our families here. and both have kids in school, and yeah, and we're going to get to know each other through this podcast. So
for better or for worse,
yeah,
I shouldn't say that. It's going to be for better. I'm super excited. So that's it. I mean, and we don't. Well, there's nothing like this right now.
Right.
And I think it's an interesting thing that you said, which is we do need to spend some time on the history of the village and whatever topic we might be discussing.
Right.
But we're not going to dwell in the past.
Right.
Because this community is going places. So that's what we really want to explore.
Yeah.
Where we are today and where we're going.
Yeah. This podcast should be for people who live locally, who care about the town and want to contribute to the show eventually. We'll have many ways they can do that.
Yes.
But also people who are visiting the town. Maybe they're thinking about moving here, or maybe it's just a place they like to visit regularly on vacation, or they're here for the first time and they get to hear this podcast. And I mean, how cool to go and visit a place, and you can check out the local stores and restaurants and all that, but you could also maybe one day this ends up on a website on the village and they say, oh, you can click on the SL Effect show and you can listen to Justin and Jeremy and whoever else it might be talk about what's going on in the town.
And I think we should have a goal of making people who don't live here, who listen to the show, jealous that they don't live here.
That's right.
That's
Absolutely.
a win.
Yeah.
That would be my ultimate, is that somebody got so jealous that they said, well, we have to keep coming back to this.
So
place.
we're gonna cure the housing issue in Saranac Lake with this show. That's all it took.
Or we're gonna make it worse.
The demand,
because of the demand that we are going to create.
That's right. That's right.
But you know what? That's going to be a topic. I already wrote that down on our list.
We've got our list. We've got our Google Docs. So we've had many months, as we mentioned, planning this, coming up with what does it look like, what topics. I think the first thing we did when we decided to do a podcast was to Google, how do you do a podcast? And we watched lots of videos on how to do a podcast. What equipment do you need? And lots of sessions where we thought we were ready to go, and we were missing this wire. We're missing this setup.
We weren't supposed to reveal how novice we are.
I think that's obvious at this point.
Oh, okay. Newbies.
That's the point, right?
Newbies, yes. Well,
intentionally unpolished. Yeah.
And it's been fun to learn something new.
Yeah. And hopefully we look back at episode, when we're on episode 570.
Yes.
We'll look back at episode 1. We'll be in a much nicer studio.
Right.
Not that this isn't beautiful. I mean, look at the amazing view.
It's beautiful.
What could you ask for? It's always gorgeous. So yeah, that's the goal. And to get people to engage, to talk with us. This is not supposed to be Justin and Jeremy's opinion of Saranac Lake. This is supposed to be a place where people can voice their opinions. And
yes. So two things. Let's talk about that for a second. Well, first of all, back to the technology. I sure hope people will be able to hear this.
If not, we're just having a nice conversation. This is our dry run.
10 minutes, and we'll see if there's audio at the end.
And they won't know if this was our 9th time having this conversation or the first.
Another mystery. So back to getting feedback from listeners.
Yep.
We have right now, we do have a Facebook page.
We do.
So that's one way to contact us. And we also have an email address, saranaclakeeffectshow@gmail.com.
Yep.
And so either of those will work. And we'd love to get your feedback, unless it's not good feedback.
Bring it on. We want the bad feedback too. Those are fun to share.
Well, it's fine. No, that's how you learn. But topics,
constructive feedback.
Feedback. But we would love ideas for topics.
Yep.
We would love ideas for guests.
Absolutely. And if you're somebody who wants to come on the podcast, just tell us why. And
tell us who you are and why you're interested.
And we'll have you on. I mean,
I can't wait.
No.
So
great.
we're gonna have a couple episodes here just to get started, and then we'll bring on our first guest.
That's the plan.
So today, you're kind of the guest.
Kind of, yeah.
Because we've got a topic that you're the subject expert, and I'm really interested to get into this. It's kind of fun, and it's very Saranac Lake.
Yeah.
I mean, it's about as Saranac Lake as you can get as a topic.
Well, when everyone comes to town for the first time and they see Lake Flower, they assume that that's Saranac Lake. or that's Lake Saranac, as I have from people.
Lake Saranac.
It's Lake Saranac.
I think the founders of the communities across the Adirondacks did that on purpose.
Yeah, I think so.
There's so many communities that are on a body of water, not named after that body of water.
100%.
But that's okay. So Lake Flower is not Saranac Lake. Where is Saranac Lake?
Where is Saranac Lake? So what is Saranac? So Saranac Lake is really 3 lakes.
Right.
It's lower, middle, and upper. And so how do you get to them? What do you do on them? All that kind of stuff we can talk about.
That's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Now, this is a podcast, so and we are on video, and we're not. I mean, I've got a map here because
we have props,
right? So I'm a geography guy. I love maps, so I brought my Paddler Sports Press map.
All right.
This is a local business that makes these maps
here,
right in Saranac Lake.
Okay.
So you can pick it up anywhere. But so while we have this discussion today, I'm going to be referring to my map.
Okay.
Because I'm a map guy. So one of the interesting things as we get into this is that Lower Saranac Lake is just a couple. I mean, it's less than a mile from the actual incorporated boundaries of the village of Saranac Lake.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's pretty cool that we have so much water surrounding our community. I think it's a pretty strong identifier.
Well, it's all so interconnected. I mean, if you're in town and you're on Lake Flower, you can get to Lower and Middle Saranac. You can't get to Upper without walking a little bit, doing one carryover.
Right. But
you can get to Lower and Middle, depending on if you're paddling, it's going to take you a lot longer, but you can do it.
Yeah.
And lots of lakes to explore in between. I mean, I believe it's 17 or 18 miles of lake. And Lower is the lake that I spent most of my time on growing up. So,
and why is that? Like, what I mean, what did you do and why? Why did you spend so much time there?
So I mean, Lower was always my family going all the way back. So we'll just start out with a fun story. So a lot of the land on Lower Saranac now, it's always been owned by the state. The DEC controls it; they run it. But back in the day, like in the 30s and 40s. People were allowed, or people just did, or actually prior to that, people just built up their own little campsite. They kind of like claimed it, and then you could rent out a section of land and you could build a structure on it. The structure was yours that you owned, but the state owned the land. And my family had such a camp back in the late 30s. They had a camp right if you're at the state boat launch on the way to Tupper there on Route 3 there, and right across the lake there was kind of where it was. And actually, the fireplace that they built and is still there, and there's like a bottle opener in a tree. That's the only thing left of the camp.
The bottle opener is still there.
The bottle opener is there in the tree. Yeah.
Okay. So are we revealing this location, or is it kind of a family?
No,
secret?
we'll leave it alone.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want. Yeah, the bottle opener shall remain.
I'm keeping a tally. So far, we have created 3 mysteries.
3 mysteries. Yeah. Okay.
Just this could be episode 1. Just cliffhangers. It's gonna be our running theme. May or may not ever be revealed.
Yeah, but they got to listen to every episode to find out.
Yes.
And yeah, so my family had it forever, and well, not forever. They had it, and then in 1976, like all other families who had camps, they lost it. The state came in and said, no more people having camps. We're not renewing your lease. And we're going to come in, we're going to knock down your structures, and we're going to just turn this into just land people can, camp on or just have day use.
Right.
And so that's what happened. I mean, I've heard rumors about what happened to a lot of the stuff at those camps. I heard was just kind of tossed into the lake, which is why I spent a lot of my time as a young kid at all the different islands snorkeling and going down and finding cool bottles and things like that. My grandfather, so it was my maternal grandmother's family who had the camp originally. She married my grandfather, and him and his. If you're local to Saranac Lake, and you've been around long enough, the Lewis boys were quite the crew, and my grandfather was a Lewis, and they rather than let the state come in and take it, they burned it down.
The tent platform.
The whole cabin. They had a whole cabin.
They had a whole cabin.
Whole cabin built.
So they just burned it down.
They burned it down. Controlled burn. No forest fire.
Sounds like something that was done with all safety.
Oh yes, they got approval from the fire marshal and all that.
Yes.
So they burned it to the ground, which was, ceremonious.
I mean, I was going to ask that. I mean, you weren't around, but
No.
I have to imagine that was not a popular move by DEC.
By DEC, the DEC taking back the land. You mean?
Oh
no, yeah, people were very much not happy with that. I mean, and that happened to, so if you go to Bluff Rock, Bluff Rock is on Lower Saranac. It's probably the most Bluff Island, the most popular one here. It's got the big 80-foot cliff, kind of the rite of passage for high schoolers to jump off of. At least it was when I was growing up. I've done it once, and that's it.
That was enough.
Well, there's the 20-footer, the 40-footer, and the 80. I haven't measured them exactly. But that was the 80-footer is the one that you jump off of, and you typically don't do it more than once. So I jumped off it with flip-flops on, and it's a split. When I hit the water, the impact kind of split them open. So yeah, but at Bluff Island, there's kind of the little peninsula that sticks out facing up the lake. And there's still, because there used to be, back when people had camps, there used to be docks on all of these places. There were actual docks.
Right.
No more. But you can look in certain spots, you can see kind of the bolts in the rocks from where the docks used to be. And a lot of the old fireplaces are still there. But even people from, the beginning of this town who had camps there, they lost them too. So the people were not happy with the state taking it back.
Yeah. So one of these, we might need to write this down. We should find someone who is older than us, who was around at that time, and it would be fun to hear their experience. Yeah,
it was 76 when they took them back. So that's not going back too much further than me.
So fast forward, then you're around spending time snorkeling and doing whatever else. And that's a tradition that you carry to this day. And it's not just your family. There's a lot of families who make annual pilgrimages. Yeah.
Well, going up on the lake, I feel like is something I wish that people had more access to here. And I wish, so talking about what we can do going forward in SL, how can we make the lakes more accessible? If you're in town, you can easily walk to Lake Flower. There used to be a public beach. The Lake Colby public beach used to be at Lake Flower. So that's less accessible now. But especially getting access to lower, there's a marina, which used to be Duso's or Crescent Bay, and now is the SL Marina. And then there's the state boat launch. Right. So getting access, I think, is important. For me, my family growing up, we had a little motorboat, and every weekend it was getting up, packing the cooler, and just going out on the lake. And it didn't really matter what kind of boat you had. It was just, could you get on the water?
Right.
Something with a motor, ideally. Because there's a lot of lake around the cover.
That boat, you didn't leave it in marina. You just had it.
That was trailered. Yeah, which was always fun.
Right.
Probably the most stressful thing someone can go through is launching their boat at the state boat launch with lines of tourists watching and trying not to, drop your prop on the cement. Right. And I feel like probably lots of marriages were destroyed at the state boat launch.
At the state boat launch. Yes.
Yeah. So that's how we did it. We launched it there. And yeah, you could also launch at Lake Flower. But we tended to spend more time on lower. And yeah, I grew up camping up there. And one of my childhood friends was named Matt Duso, whose grandfather was Don Duso, who had the marina. And so grew up there and just spending all the time I could on the lake. And just, to me, there's, you take it for granted,
Yeah.
Growing up here, you don't realize how lucky we are to have that.
Right. And sometimes it takes being away for a while to be reminded of that. So, and let's talk a little bit about the connections and how these lakes are all connected, because I think that really is something that's pretty unique.
Yeah.
Because you can, if you live here, you know this, but it's still pretty remarkable. Lake Flower, right in the village of Saranac Lake, is actually connected to lower Saranac Lake.
Yeah.
You could walk from Lake Flower to lower Saranac Lake through the village. It's probably 1.5 miles to get from one to the other. Or you can go through the river and up through the lock to get to lower Saranac.
Yeah.
Which people do all the time. It's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
And I guess if you want to get to the lower lake, you just go to the second pond boat launch and get there. But
But part of it is just the day. So you can get on the water in Flower or up at Lower and go down to Lake Flower.
Either way.
Okay, I'm going to go down and your day is going to be spent traveling down, listening to music, going to Mountain Mist for some ice cream, whatever it might be.
Waiting in line at the lock.
Waiting, and possibly doing the locks depending on what time you hit them on your own or what time of year it is. But and especially, the locks from Flower to Lower are the more modern locks. You kind of spin wheels and push buttons.
Right.
The locks from Lower to Middle, or what we call Round Lake, that's old school.
Yes.
That's if you put your back into it, literally. You put your back up against it and the power of your legs to open those things up.
Yeah.
So,
and the lakes, the lakes are magnificent. There's no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the transit, the river in between, in between has its own, I think it's got its own character.
All the wildlife you're going to see.
Yeah. It's pretty cool to be on this magnificent lake with Ampersand Mountain behind you,
mm-hmm.
or you can see on Lower Lake. I love looking down. What would that be, to the northeast, looking at Mackenzie?
Yep.
So, but then you get on the river and it's got this different feel that's just very unique and a lot of fun.
I always feel when you're going from Lower to Middle and you're kind of just doing like switchbacks back and forth through the river, and it kind of feels like when you finally open up and you're going towards it, it kind of feels like that scene in Jurassic Park where they open the gates to the park and there's just these beautiful mountains in the background. So it always reminds me of that. But
at least here there's no velociraptors.
No.
So we're gonna chalk that up as a win.
Although there are the occasional leeches you have to watch out for. That can happen.
That's just the way life goes around here. Most of my experience on the Lower Lake is doing the round the mountain, 10-mile round the mountain race.
Okay.
I've done that a number of times in a couple different boats. And every single time I'm out on the Lower Lake and then on the river coming back through, I'm always wishing I wasn't racing.
Sure. Take it more in.
Yeah, take it more in.
Yeah.
Now I've done it. I've been out there a fair amount, not racing, but still you're just like, why am I suffering
getting past
through
this? Yeah.
Why not just stop and just take it easy?
Well, and I think that speaks to as well, so we choose to live here. We have kids here, whether you have kids here or not, kids in general. People look at children today on a national level and the narrative is about they're obsessed with technology and things like that. But you take a kid, and one of the reasons I love living here is for this very reason. You take and the people that visit do this. You take your kid or your kids out on the lake, and there's no and this is primitive camping for those who don't know. There's no RV hookups, there's no electricity. It's literally usually a pretty broken down fire pit,
right?
A picnic table, and you're lucky if you find flat land where there isn't a root you got to lie on at night.
Right.
So it's primitive as it gets. And but you take kids out there and you just say, all right, here's a fishing pole, there's the water.
Yep.
We're gonna build a fire. I first time I brought my daughter, we used a flint to start a fire, which I'll never do that again. But we did that, and just that experience, and it's amazing to see a kid in the 21st century just take to that, and you watch them kind of do the thing that people have been doing for hundreds of years up here. What drew people here originally,
right?
And so to me, that's one of the best parts about it up there is just waking up on the lake. You don't ever sleep very well when you go camping. You kind of you're up at 5 a.m.
right?
But waking up and there's that mist on the lake, and the nature's kind of coming alive, and you get up and you do all the classics, s'mores and all that kind of stuff. But it
doesn't get any better.
No, it's like a John Hughes 1980s movie.
This I think it was this last year I did the 90 miler.
Oh gosh, yeah.
No, sorry, not the 90 miler. That's still on my bucket list. And the round the mountain race. And when I got done, I don't remember who it was, but there was someone finishing the race, maybe a double canoe, I don't remember, but they were visiting. They're not from here.
Mm-hmm.
And they could not believe the view from Kawasa Lake.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, so Kawasa.
Osita.
Osita, yeah. But Osita, that's the way.
Because we go right through Osita back into Lake Flower.
Well, because if you're at Lake Flower and you want to get to Lower, you're going to go through Lake Flower. You're going to kind of go up through the channel,
right?
And then you're going to have a choice. You're going to hit Osita.
Yep.
And then your choice is: do I want to go through the channel towards Lower, or do I want to hook a right and go to Kawasa?
Right.
and Kawasa is a beautiful spot unto itself.
Yep.
And so, and yeah, and then navigating the lakes and knowing which sites. I mean, I pride myself on that, knowing which sites are the best.
And we would not ask you to reveal the best sites. Instead, we would say, well, you just have to explore and find out what you find is best. But I mean, how many have you tried, and or do you pretty much stick to a couple?
I mean, on Lower Saranac, I think there's around 65 or 68 sites. I definitely have my handful of 5 or 6 that are prime, my favorites, but they're good for different reasons.
Depends on what you're looking for.
Well, yeah. Well, if you're going with a bunch of people, there's certain ones you want. If you're thinking about if there's going to be kids there or not, what you want, thinking very carefully about where the sun rises and sets and where your site's going to be. You can be in a site that might be geographically beautiful, like the land itself, but you're getting no sun. Other sites,
or a ton of wind,
Thinking about the time of year it is, and island camping or versus mainland camping. So yeah, my biggest issue, we'll get into one of my beefs is the way that you reserve a site, because it's run by Reserve America,
right?
Which is this
they are the company that the state uses to make reservations at all state campgrounds.
Correct. And they're used across the country.
They're used by other states as well.
And so the issue for me is, the way it works is when you're 9 months out exactly, you can start booking a site. So it's November 11th. So what would that be like? August 11th. If there's a site available, I can book it. And then if I book that site for August 11th of next year, I can book forward like about 2 weeks. So what people do, and I've been doing it forever, is you'll get on there. It's 9 a.m. that day.
Everybody's there.
Everyone's there trying to get those 5 sites that I think are the best.
Yep.
And I have no problem with that. The game, that's fine. My issue is I can't tell you how many times I've been up the lake, and when I'm camping, or just like you cruise around a lot. You don't just stay at your site.
Sure.
And you're cruising the lake, and there's 60 some odd sites. And you can look online and see the entire lake is reserved, no vacancy.
Right.
Okay. There's maybe 4 or 5 campfires. Almost all of those sites people are not camping at. Maybe they're using them as day sites, but they're not camping. And so, hey, partly I'd say, well, they're still paying their money, but where that money goes exactly, I don't know how much that benefits us locally.
Right.
So my issue is there should be some kind of a thing where if you're not popping up a tent and camping over, you shouldn't be locking down these sites. People often will reserve a site and then they'll stay at a hotel for a couple of weeks, and they'll just have a site they want to go to for an hour during the day.
Now, is some of this that people are reserving 9 months out because they know that if they don't, they can't get a site, and then life happens.
Yeah.
It rains and they don't go out, or something came up and they can only go for a day when they reserved a week.
And Reserve America is very non-forgiving with cancellation. You don't get hardly any money back. And so my idea would be that we would set up a system where, because you have the DEC out there kind of patrolling. I did that for one summer. I was my job was to drive around in the boat with my buddy, and we just checked on the campsites, checked on usually the tourists, and then the fun job at the end of the summer was cleaning out the outhouses and all that.
Oh, the outhouses. That's fun. And the fire pits.
Yep. Well, the fire pit was less difficult, but yeah, rite of passage there as well. But if you're not there by X time, then you lose the site for whatever. I don't necessarily know the answer to it, but it does frustrate me when I'm out there, and it'd be so cool to see 60 fires lit up across the lake.
That goes back to what you talked about earlier, is increasing access
for locals, especially. Yeah.
Yeah. And especially to locals.
Yeah. Because there's kids here, who I've, working on the school board and talking to principals, taking kids on field trips to Mount Van Ho, and realizing that maybe half the kids in that trip that day have never even been up a mountain, and they live here.
Right. Yeah.
I would venture that there's probably more kids that have never been on the lake.
Right.
Never been on Lower Saranac, never camped on the lake.
Well, I mean, I think it's really good for us to keep that in mind. And I'm not just talking the two of us, but all of us, that I think we'll spend a lot of time here talking about how awesome Saranac Lake is, and deservedly so.
Mm-hmm.
But we're by no means less fortunate. We're very lucky. And
for sure.
We're in a community where not everybody has the same advantages. I just went on the 4th grade field trip to Mount Joe. It's Mount Joe.
Okay.
And yeah, there were a number of fourth graders who had never hiked a mountain before.
Yeah.
And to see how much they loved getting to the top.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was such a great accomplishment
Yeah.
for them. You know, I went with my son, and he's been up mountains before, and you know, whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
he had a good time, but he's been up before. So these kids were just so ecstatic, and it would be the same thing being on the lake.
It'd be like growing up on a beach community, never being on a surfboard. You know, like it's
Right.
something where I feel like we love this town.
Yep.
We think it's a great place to be, but there's room for improvement, and there is very much a divide of kind of the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah. And it's growing.
It's growing, and there's a lot, and there's growing pains of that. But I feel like it's something we can, if we can figure out field trips up mountains, we can figure out field trips to the lake somehow. And they're
starting to do that. I know there's been some field trips where Adirondack Lakes and Trails are, and I'm not
might
sure.
Might be a good guess for us.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the other outfitters were a part of that, and are taking sixth graders out in canoes.
Oh yeah, heck yeah.
And so I think that's pretty cool. And we should. I love the fact. I mean, what we're talking about is real. I mean, there's this divide, and there's a growing number of people who are having increasing struggles making ends meet and all that kind of stuff. But fortunately, this is a very caring and giving community.
100%.
And there's so much volunteerism and just like donations that are given to so many different causes and a lot of them benefit our children. So that's just this underlying quality of Saranac Lake that you may not see if you're just passing through for a day or a week. But when you live here, you see it, and you're so grateful for it.
You know, a lot of people, when I was telling, I grew up here, graduated in 2000, and lived a bunch of different places, mostly in the Southeast, a lot of different places in North Carolina, in Nashville, then in Vermont. And every time I told someone my ultimate goal, which it was for many years, was to get back to my hometown. You know, a lot of people see moving back to your hometown as like a defeat. Like, oh, you couldn't make it out there.
Right.
But for me, it was, no, this is like, you know, I didn't realize how good it was till I left. And there was definitely times where I was like, I can't wait to get out of this town, you know, like all people say at some point. But it is that the community cares. And I think that in one sentence, the reason I would say I wanted to be back here was it's a place where kids can be kids for a little bit longer. And this is an example of that, getting kids out in nature, getting them to just, you know, letting a kid, I mean, I don't care how much kid likes video games or not, or how much they don't like the woods or not. You teach a kid how to build a fire, they're going to be into it. I mean, the kids like it. They like learning how to build a fire or catch a fish or whatever it might be. Learning to jump off a rock into the water. These are all things that are primitive, but kids respond to them. Who
doesn't like to hang out on an island?
Yeah, well, exactly. And I mean, we had back in the day, you know, back in the late mid-19th century when this area was first being established, we had these massive hotels on Lower Saranac, you know. I mean, you had the first one, which was the Martin House, I think was the name. It was the local name they called it, was around for a while. That one ended up burning down. And you had, I mean, obviously we have Ampersand kind of resort now there, but that's there's only so many of those there. And a lot of those townhouses are a little more expensive. And then one of the hotels, the Alexander House, which was now, that building was eventually donated to Trudeau Institute. So, and you know, I think that there was a recognition back then that it was a special place to be on the lake. And so let's build these. Back then it was maybe 80 to 100 rooms, and they got bigger a little bit. And that kind of went away. And so you can conceivably grow up in this town, and maybe you live kind of near the downtown area, and you never even see Lower Saranac. And,
it's easy to miss it.
Yeah. And you can, you know, lots of folks probably don't know, you can even, if you're going out to the trailhead for to climb Ampersand Mountain, you park on the right and you cross the street to go to the trailhead. But in the woods there, you just take a path and you can pop out in Middle Saranac, which is a beautiful beach.
Beautiful beach.
And I mean, you have a day out there, and I mean, it's like, this is, you know, one of those instances of people being like, you know, Imagine if you got to live here.
And you don't need, I mean, it's a very short walk.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You don't need a boat.
You don't need a boat to get there.
And you can just have a great day.
It's a beautiful beach,
right.
you know. Yeah.
Well, I think I should talk about Lonesome Bay.
Okay.
Because that's a place that we go to often, just for a walk. And you know that trail. You go out Route 3, and there's this road that eventually goes to a ranger cabin.
Yep.
But there's a trail that goes along Lonesome Bay out to the point. And a lot of people use it. It's a great way to access the lake and the water without needing a boat.
Yep.
And for those who are adventurous, there's a cave.
Okay.
Have you been in?
I don't know. I don't know about the cave.
Oh yeah, there's a cave out there.
Okay.
And our kids love it.
Okay.
And so I highly recommend it as a good family walk.
All right. Yeah, so there you go. It's something that I never even knew about, even though I grew up here. And I've been to Lonesome Bay many times. And so for us, it was growing up was, you know, what is now the SL Marina. It was Crescent Bay back then. And there's the Rock, which we all called just the Rock, the little rock right there that juts out of the marina, and kids jump off of it. Back in the day when it was Crescent, they didn't like anyone really going there and using that rock insurance purpose. Probably now it's pretty open and welcoming to use it. Still don't want you going there at night.
Sure.
Although that's where me and my friends would go at night and kind of do stargazing. And first place I ever went skinny dipping, just so you're aware. That's where that happened.
I think that's something that should have remained a mystery.
No. We're all you know.
Let me
all cards on the deck here on the SL Effect show.
I guess so. I'll have to keep that one in mind. So
keep you guessing, Jeremy.
Here's a question. You talked about accessibility to the lake.
Yep.
And what I gained from this, so you had these hotels on the lake. There are private homes on the lake.
Yeah. And the hotels were more so even then. It wasn't like a lot of, I mean, it was definitely the rich and the famous. It was, you had Ralph Waldo Emerson, Theodore Roosevelt, Einstein. I mean,
yes,
this was the clientele.
Right. So, but then you have all the state land that locals were able to use for a couple generations. And then since 1976, there's a public campground. And although the Reserve America system may not be as user-friendly as one might want, it's a lot cheaper to rent a campsite than it is to rent an Airbnb or stay at Ampersand Bay Resort. So that's pretty cool. And that's something. I have a friend from Michigan, and there's parts of Michigan that have a lot of water and lakes, and he just is continually reminded me how awesome the Adirondacks are, because you do have so many bodies of water that are publicly owned and that anybody can just go use them. And then back where he's from, you have all these bodies of water completely surrounded by homes and private land, and many of them you can't access at all. And then others might just have a boat launch and that's it. And I think that's another one of those things that we take for granted.
It is pretty special when you kind of leave Ampersand Bay, or the bay where the marina is, and there's certainly homes around there, but then you quickly go up the lake and there's just nothing but wilderness. And it's an imperfect system. But your point about you can rent a campsite for, I mean, even with the reservation fee, you're talking like $22, I think, to rent a campsite. And depending on which site you get, we won't name those yet. You'll get some of the most beautiful views you could imagine. And you got it. So if you're adventurous and you want, the weather here can be tricky. You invest in, a simple tarp system and some things to run across trees, so that if you do get stuck in the rain for a couple of days, you just make it work. And it's a great experience. I mean, and I think of all the things that drew me back here when my wife's from North Carolina, and her first thing she said when I was discussing moving back here, she said, "All right, I'll do it, but we got to get a boat." And I was okay. I was just not to convince me. So we moved back and we bought some used, broken down boat, and it worked great though. I mean, it got us on the water.
Right.
It was in 1997, but we were on the water and it worked. And and this just recently traded it in for a bigger boat now that we've got 4 kids. So needed more room. But the other great thing about here is there's always, if you want to get on the water, and there's an economic issue, but there's always used boats. You know, someone's always selling an old used boat, or you can rent a little John boat, something like that, and get out there, or just walk up to the launch and just put a canoe or a kayak in and go for it.
Well, that's what we do.
Yeah, I love seeing that. People paddling out to a site, and you know,
that's where we have our canoes and kayaks, and we love it. Even when my kids tip the kayak over in the middle of Middle Saranac, and I can't get all the water out, and I have to drag it behind me to an island, and it takes 10 times longer than it was supposed to. This is what just happened this past summer.
Sounds like
it's still a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can't beat it. Yeah.
So I have one last question though.
Okay.
There's been a debate, and I'm curious your opinion, just because you've been on this lake for a long time. You've been able to watch it over several decades, really.
Yeah.
And
proposed to my wife on this lake, on Bluff, actually.
Okay, that's awesome. That's pretty cool. So it has this has a special place in your heart.
Yeah.
So there has been debate and controversy over the carrying capacity of, in particular, Lower Saranac, because of the proposed expansion of the marina.
Yep.
And that question's also being asked now with the proposed changes to the marina on Upper Saranac. What have you seen, and what's your? I mean, this is not a scientific take. This is just the Justin Garwood take, having grown up on the lake and seeing it now.
I'll admit I'm a bit biased in that I do keep my boat at the SL Marina. I'm grateful to have a slip there, which is not easy to come by, and I store my boat there. So would it be great if I could just have the lake to myself? Yeah, of course. I mean, who wouldn't want a whole lake to themselves? But that would be selfish, and I wouldn't want that. I've been on that lake since as long as I can remember. I've been and recently moving back, when all this debate's going on about the marina expanding and adding more boats or dock space for boats. I've been out there on 4th of July. It's not a problem. I mean, the lakes are big enough. Do you maybe have on 4th of July? Do you maybe have? Is it a little bit louder? Sure. Are people water skiing through parts of the lake they probably shouldn't? Yeah, of course. Then you know what the solution to that is, and it's mostly probably at that time mostly tourists that are doing it. You know what the solution is? Just don't go on the lake on the 4th of July. That's my solution to that one. If you don't want to deal with that.
Well, it's kind of like you don't go hiking on Cascade Mountain on Columbus Day weekend.
And if you do, you can't complain that it's crowded.
Right.
Beyond that, I've seen no issue. I mean, I've gone up and down the channel where you got to go through the locks. You can get 1-2 boats through at a time. Maybe it's a 15-minute wait the worst time. I really feel like it's a case of, and I get it. You know, when you have, I can't think of the saying, but they want to, you want to shut the barn door behind you.
Barn door behind you.
I get wanting to keep it to yourself, but to me, I don't think there's people that spend more time on the lake. I'm sure there are, but I spend a lot of time on there. If all the time I spend in the summer, the majority of my time is on that lake. I do work from that lake. I'll go out there on my boat with my laptop and I'll work from home on the boat. I don't see a problem.
So are we going to do a podcast episode?
Well, I think that's next.
From the boat?
That's the next thing. Yeah, we can.
Can we do it not in November or February?
Did just pull the boat. It's a sad day. The boat was put away.
Well, it probably stayed out a little bit longer this year.
It did. Yeah, it did. We got real lucky with that summer. Amazing. So, but yeah, I think to answer that question, yeah, I don't see it being a problem. I get some of the regulations that went into effect around like jet skis can't go certain close to the shore. That makes sense. That's safety. You don't want that happening. But in terms of there's enough room on Lower Saranac and Middle Saranac for everyone. And I think that everyone should be able to enjoy it. And if the problem is people are mistreating the lake, being disrespectful to others, well, that's a simple solution. Just have the DEC officials out there patrolling more. Just keep an eye on it.
It gets into a whole different discussion, which may or may not be a good topic in the future, is just the idea of stewardship when you're using any of the public land around us, and enforcement of existing regulations. And we won't get into it today, but that's a question that's constantly being discussed around the park, is the capacity of existing DEC staff to manage the lands that they are responsible for. It's a tough job. All right, so we're about out of time. So this was episode 1. What did you think?
I thought,
or do we have to listen to it?
I don't know. I mean, are we going to polish this and edit it and cut things? I don't know. I think just putting it out there, putting the raw version out there, and being honest.
It does have to it has to go through
a little production.
Our post production. We have a whole team, a big team behind us.
We'll get our credits rolling at the end,
right? So we'll see if it gets how much it gets polished or just gets uploaded,
or if our parent company cancels us. That's always a possibility. We might get bought out by Elon Musk. So
I think I should remind everybody that we want your feedback, and a couple of different ways to do that is, one is through Facebook. So we have the Saranac Lake Effect Show Facebook page, and also our email address at saranaclakeeffectshow@gmail.com.
Or if you see us around town and want to talk about the show, want to know where you can get this awesome swag, t-shirt, hat. I'm gonna
display it here.
We have to be able to pay our visual, arts people. So I think, and every episode is going to be different in terms of topic. This one was more about the outdoors. There's going to be other ones about downtown.
We're going to have to talk about the school system,
the schools
at some point.
Yep. Local politics.
Yeah.
We'll be careful there. We'll keep it generic. We'll keep it generic.
Yeah.
But a lot of, and really, I think the message is important, that it's not just topics we come up with. We want people to say, hey, talk about this.
Yes.
And that's what, again, this isn't Talk of the Town 2.0, but that's what a lot of Talk of the Town was. It was people would call up and say, I want to talk about this. And then they would talk about it. So getting that feedback on what you want us to talk about and what you want to hear us debate, and then eventually having more of that audience engagement where we can have live, feedback.
Right.
With people making comments.
We'll get there.
We're coming. It's coming. Yeah.
All right. Well, so we're going to call it a wrap. Episode 1 of the Saranac Lake Effect Show.
That's right.
Thanks for joining me.
We'll see you next time. Yeah. Thank you, Jeremy.
And we'll see you next time.
All right. Take care.